Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Good evening, or good morning, depending on what time of day or evening it is. But anyway, here we are at Eugene Cannabis TV, and we've got a special guest, Thomas Payne. Hasn't been around for a year or two on our show, and back again. Welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Good to be here. Just great to be here.
So 4th of July coming up, and Thomas gave me a call and said he wanted to come on the show, and he had a presentation to give, and so we can always learn from the wise words of Thomas Payne.
Thank you very much. And good evening, everybody, and happy July 4th. Even though you may see this a day or so after July 4th, I'm dedicating this to the godfather of the American experiment, Brother Ben Franklin, doctor, because he was the godfather of the American experiment. And he spent the whole sum of years after the French and Indian War, about 13 years, from 1763 to 1770, almost 1776, when they caught him for treason over in London. But what he was doing over in London was he was the representative for all the colonies for these 13 years, and he was the man making things happen over there. He was mingling, he was part of Parliament. He learned, he was super genius, boy genius, child genius, man genius, all the way through his life. And he exhibited this all through his life. And when he was over in England, he got to know all the heads, the dignitaries that he would be dealing with after his war was over. So he was the ultimate revolutionary because he was over there making friends with the enemy. And who couldn't love Poor Richard? Poor Richard did Poor Richard's Almanac from 1733 until 1758. 25 straight years in about 20 languages, 20 different languages. China, he got to every place. He was the first worldly, renowned, loved man. Some people call him the Renaissance man. He was not only the best writer the world has ever seen, but best writer the world has ever seen, without a doubt. And the reason I say that, he was the best politicking individual as well. And Poor Richard's Almanac was loved by every person in every country. He educated the world on everything. And they leave so much out of his almanacs because of the drug war, because our founding fathers were not only God-loving Freemasons, Newtonian deists were called, because we believe in the supreme, almighty creator of the earth. And so I'm dedicating this to Ben because he converted so many people, dignitaries while he was in London, to Freemasonry, and helped us win the war. Because if guys got captured and they showed that they were Freemasons, they were let go. They were not held captive in most instances, in tons of instances. But he did such a job over there that Joseph Priestley, one of the great Enlightenment scientists, but his father was a minister, and so too did he get into that, but he was also very much into science more than anything, and he was also the discoverer of oxygen, just to make a point. But he said this about Ben and his activities over there. He says, it's much to be lamented, if not ever to be lamented, that a man of Dr. Franklin's great character and excellent nature would be an unbeliever in Christianity, and that he made so many others of our citizens unbelievers. Now, you know, folks, to make somebody scratch their beliefs in, say, the Bible or something like that, he's got to offer up something really special. And that specialty was conversion to Freemasons and Newtonian deism, where they worshiped the laws of nature and nature's God, the scientific God that gave us all the intelligence to figure out everything. So then here he comes back to the colonies after, you know, they would have hung anybody else for treason over in London at that time or any other time around then. But he was, poor Richard Saunders, worldwide loved, most powerful man in the world. And so what they did instead was they had this chamber where they chastised politicians and things like that for wrongdoings. And they made him stand at attention for an hour and a half while they just blasted him from one side to the other, while he just took it all in and became more convinced that his revolution was the answer to get rid of governments, monarchy, and their kings and queens who, you know, could be idiots that inherit the post of a king or a queen, and still they had to be the king or queen. So he addresses that, and the statement I'm going to make now is he was looking for a Thomas Paine while he was over in London, somebody who was free to go, travel the world, who didn't have a family or anything, who didn't have a profession that, to speak of. Thomas Paine had failed in everything he had done, started off as a stay maker and corset maker, and Franklin found him at about the age of 34, 35, and began, he says, that's my man. He had a vibrant personality, a good wit, just needed a lot of writing education so he could become a writer to influence the Enlightenment and the Europeans to take after what we did after we won the war. But first we had to go to war. We had to get into a Declaration of Independence. Now, I always thought, you know, where did this Declaration of Independence come? Here it's 1776, July 4th, when in January 10th, when the first edition of Common Sense came out, that's totally anonymous. Everybody knew who wrote Common Sense, the master of Common Sense at the time. However, what I'm going to announce tonight is that this work, Common Sense, is considered the #1 most brilliant book ever written in the history of the English language, if not the most brilliant book ever written in history. And right on the front cover, who do we see there? Inculcating this conspiracy that obviously started after Franklin's death in 1790. So effectively 222 years. You ask the average person on the street what Common Sense was about, let alone who wrote it. They're clueless. So, when I got this presented to me, it was really a unique experience. A guy I met at the first Seattle Hemp Fest in 2000. We had hung out all afternoon. He had a booth and everything. And we got a lot of chance to talk. He had a license plate from Nevada, Hemp Man. It was great. But Marcello, before we parted, he said, just a minute. He went back to his 63 yellow convertible LeSabre with Hemp Man license plate and gave me this. And he went like that. And I go, my God, I've never read this. And I've considered myself a very knowledgeable American historian all my life. I knew I was part of the revolution in a past life from earliest time I can remember. And so, not a historian. But when I saw this, after Marcello gave it to me, I took it home. He says, here's philosophy. The most greatest philosophical dissertation ever written for humankind, because it's universal in its beliefs. So the introduction that Isaac Kramnik first did in 1976, which is our bicentennial, he refused to put Thomas Paine on the cover because he knew Thomas Paine had never written or published a thing until 1790, when he, year after Franklin died, wrote parts 1 and parts 2 of The Rights of Man, and then from 1793 to 95 over in French prison that he was helped conduct the French Revolution, he put out The Age of Reason, parts 1 and 2. And you read both works, and anybody who has read anything can figure out that these are two different authors. So, rip it like this. You've got this 66-page booklet that is an exact replica of Ben's first publication when he went over to London as a lad of 18 and stayed over there till he was 20. So he spent a couple years over in London during Isaac Newton's last few years of his life and left back home right before with Isaac Newton's great work of science, the great work it was called, but of science. And Isaac Newton, he knew, I'm sure they corresponded much during his young life. But Isaac Newton knew everything about the universe. He had everything figured out. But the scientists of this age of enlightenment, it was not just the age of enlightenment, it was the age of the scientific enlightenment, which is defined by a total rejection of traditional social, governmental, and most of all, religious traditions. That's what enlightenment for our founding fathers meant. And that's what it meant for the entire Enlightenment. They wanted this new world to be settled and formed without, leaving the crap of the old world behind, all the dogma, all the stuff, and come over here and make this a country founded on truth, true knowledge, which can only be found through use of the scientific method. You can use the scientific method and put anything up to scrutiny and say, this is false or this is correct. So that's what they touted, and they wanted this, so he gave Ben the secrets of electricity that Ben would come out with in his Poor Richard's Almanac, which this was a summation of all 25 years he put in The Way to Wealth. So in his 1742 almanac, he showed how he discovered electricity, and made the first lightning rod called the Franklin rod. He never patented it. He gave it to the world through Poor Richard's Almanac, because Poor Richard's Almanac was in 20 different languages, outsold the Bible 25 straight years running worldwide. So he was probably, in comparison to the population back then, probably 100 times wealthier than Bill Gates is today compared to the population that we have. So The Way to Wealth, I recommend everybody reading that, and you'll also be able to see that he was the author of every word of Common Sense. How much time we got? Okay, so the author of Common Sense starts off with a little thing like this. Oh, that's the editor's introduction. I don't want that. What did I do with the other one? Here it is, right here. Okay, sorry about that, people. Perhaps the sentiments, this is his introduction, perhaps the sentiments contained in the following pages are not yet sufficiently fashionable to procure them general favor. A long habit of not thinking a thing wrong gives it the superficial appearance of being right and raises first a formidable cry in defense of custom. You know, we're all going to defend our customs. And then he says, he makes statements like, even government, even in its best state, is a necessary evil, and in its worst one, an intolerable one. So government, they didn't like this later government. And then in the appendix, he blasts the Quakers. And at the end, ye have unwisely, the example which ye have unwisely set of mingling religion with politics may be disavowed and reprobated by every inhabitant of America. Sign Finis, a pseudonym that he uses here in Poor Richard's Almanac. Finis, right there, right out of Poor Richard's Almanac. Liberty and Necessity, Pleasure and Pain, his first work when he went over to London, is set up the exact same way as Common Sense. You'll note that he starts off with a poem from Dryden, a little saying there, and Thompson for Common Sense. One for Common Sense, man knows no master save creating heaven or those whom choice and common good ordain. Okay, so choice is about liberty, the freedom of choice. Tyranny, the exact opposite, and the reason that this led to the Declaration of Independence. Any law that comes between our founding principles and our inalienable rights that are found in the Declaration should be abolished, right? Right? Well, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To smoke pot is a very happy celebration. It's our liberty, our freedom of choice, an inalienable, Creator-granted freedom. Okay, so I'm proud to announce, finally, after 222 years, Ben and his greatest work are going to get their day in front of the American people. Right now, starting today, and the rest of my life is going to be devoted to truth about history, about our founding principles, and the truth about global warming. It's a crisis that we are all in, and that's what I am working on and finished. And now I'm going to present the definition of tyranny, which is the opposite of liberty, and which Common Sense and our Declaration just trashes. Tyranny is oppressive power in every form over the mind of man. And they give that to Thomas Jefferson, to quote himself, oppressive power. That's what we were up against in the beginning, and isn't that what we are up against right now? It's time to bring back our founding principles, people. Please read Common Sense, and then what got us through the war, he sent out the American Crisis Essays. And in Guide to Good Writing, shows that there is an all-American, recognizable American style. It's plain, straightforward, and concrete.
That's right.
They don't give credit to Ben Franklin, but they do give credit to Common Sense.
We're going to continue this on another segment next week, so Thomas Paine has agreed to come back and finish this for us, so we appreciate it.
Thank you very much,
Great.
Dan.
Thank you for coming, you bet. So we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We got a real close short segment here. We got our friend Reverend Will and brought in a couple of local issues that we need to bring up. One was an article in the Register Guard, the City Region section, on Monday, the 25th. You want to read the headline? This is great.
Study, medical pot laws, guiltless.
It says analysis by a university professor said there's no proof that legal uses of marijuana boost use by high school students. And this is similar to a deal down in California where they said that medical marijuana increased crime. They shut down the dispensaries, crime went up down in California, remember that? Which is the opposite of what they said was happening. So some more government lies rebuked, I guess is what we say on this one, huh?
Right, and then we talk about that, and then we'll turn around and talk about people being released from jail here in Lane County. Now, understand, folks, what is the problem when you have people who attempted to kill someone out on your streets instead of somebody who creates or smokes pot? Understand, there's such a major difference there, and if the law can't see it, then the law needs to be changed. Because understand, even then, we don't know whether or not it'll help us. I mean, you look at the laws for the legal, actually for our dispensaries or for our ability to be able to get pot medically. I mean, the whole thing is a joke. You get a card, and in return, you're supposed to get pot? No, you have to go out there and work to create herb. So I do not understand this when, right now in my trailer park, I have to walk a friend of mine to and from the Dairy Mart, where there's a person who works at the Dairy Mart in Glenwood who does not even want to be there because the people who have been released were charged with attempted murder. And it would have been murder straight up if it hadn't been for a wonderful woman who walked up to these two guys who were trying to bulldog my friend into the ground and kill him, and she cared enough to walk up and say, "Stop, I'm calling the police, 911, you need to leave." If it hadn't been for her, he would have been dead. Now, the man's afraid to go to the Dairy Mart because that's where these people are hanging out since our community has decided to let them out.
Yeah, it's priorities. I remember our friend Sharon Place, which they got her for violating her post-conviction thing. They held her in jail for 45 days, and they put her in isolation for speaking up for her rights and how she felt what they were doing to her. They put her in isolation for 2 weeks The whole time she was there, she says nobody was ever in isolation more than 48 hours, including the person that was caught shooting up heroin in the jail. Never got more than 48 hours, and they put her in for 2 weeks.
Well, understand,
So,
you know, it's like
our priorities are a little skewed.
It's like the University of Oregon. You know, I mean, they have all these programs for people who have heroin addictions, that have meth addictions, that are addicted to cigarettes, that are addicted to alcohol. But when it comes to you being busted for doing pot, you're fired. Okay, you're not given any opportunity to change yourself. And even when we went to court on this, and the guy who arrested 2 people that I know of said to the judge that these people smoked cigarettes. Then they smoked pot. Now, if the guy's wrong about one, you would think that he might be wrong about both, or at least should be challenged about it. This man said that 2 people who didn't smoke cigarettes smoked cigarettes, and then he saw them smoke pot, and that's how he came over and had the right to question them about what they were doing. Now, 2 people who were excellent workers at the University of Oregon, who were given all of their raises and stuff as need be because they were doing such an excellent job, are now being taken care of by us because they don't have a job. So my thing about this is we've had a person in Glenwood who died. We don't know whether he died of natural causes or if he was brutalized. We believe he was brutalized, but can't get a straight answer from the police department. Understand, this person being beat up at Dairy Mart, he was beat up in full sight of people. I do not understand why, if we can exclude people from downtown Eugene for crimes against people, that we can't exclude these people from Glenwood. Put them back on Eugene, put them back into Springfield. Let you deal with them. We don't want to deal with them over in Glenwood. Just because we don't have our own police department that's running around taking care of us. And you didn't listen to us anyway. You called the man who was beat up a transient. I never heard anybody from the police department apologize to him. And I don't see anybody from the police department right now walking him to Dairy Mart so he can get his food.
As we transition to the police state, as I like to say.
Basically,
anyway,
but they don't do anything beneficial.
Okay, we appreciate it. Reverend Will, come in and tell us what's going on locally, and remember to fight for freedom. That's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything.